Welcome to the I Got Fired podcast, where we help people who've been fired or afraid they might be. Today, I want to talk about some specialized areas of the law in the workplace that may not be handled by your attorney that does your discrimination matter, like our firm. Hi, my name is Tom Spiggle. I'm founder of the Spiggle Law Firm. We help people who've been fired or afraid they might be in Maryland, Washington, D.C., and Virginia, and a little bit of small legal print. If you need specific legal advice for your case, then you got it. You should go talk to a lawyer. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and I hope you find it useful. All right, so let's dive in. There are two main areas in which there's wrongdoing or something that happens in the workplace that very likely may not be handled by your the firm that does a discrimination or some kind of wrongful termination suit. The first one of these is if there's some kind of injury that occurs at the workplace. These are covered by workers' comp laws generally. So if you fall, slip and fall at your workplace and you get hurt, then you could file a workers' compensation claim, and you need to go to a lawyer who specializes in that. Workers' compensation is a very specialized area of the law, and it's somewhat rare to find attorneys who do both wrongful termination and workers' comp. I'm sure they're out there, but generally you will see those two types of claims divided. Often folks who do workers' comp, they either do that exclusively or sometimes they will combine it with a personal injury practice. Where this becomes a little bit confusing sometimes if there's a mix, right, of what goes on. I had a client some years ago. He was, there was some issues of a wrongful termination at his job, particularly with regard to race, but there was also an allegation. He said that his supervisor spat on him in the workplace, and the employer, as we were going through this, tried to say, well, since this what you're alleging physical conduct, this is really a workers' comp matter. And the reason that the employer usually will want to do that is because those claims generally have a lower threshold. Again, not a workers' comp expert, but you can go talk to somebody who does that work, and they're generally the payouts are governed by statute, and you generally don't get emotional distress and those sorts of things like you would in an ordinary discrimination wrongful termination case. And sometimes you'll see employers try to do that. In this case, we ended up settling before that issue got resolved by the court. I think we would have won that one because primarily what had happened was a matter of discrimination. But that is something to look out for. If what happened to you at work involves some kind of injury, then your best place may be to go to a workers' comp lawyer. One area that is clearly in a discrimination or wrongful termination or hostile work environment kind of case is if it's sexual, right? If you've got sexual battery, if you got unwanted touching, that's not going to be workers' comp. That is going to be a sexual harassment, hostile work environment kind of case, and those will be handled by your the lawyer that does your wrongful termination work. So so what does that mean? If you're uncertain, you can certainly call, like our office. We've got, if you call and you have something that's clearly a workers' comp matter, we have folks that we refer those cases to. You can always, of course, go to a site like avvo.com. And there are some options there to talk with a lawyer for very low cost or for free. You can also go to your local bar association. They will often have a list of lawyers or lawyers who they send cases to, and usually the lawyers volunteer to be on that list. For instance, in Virginia, the Fairfax County Lawyer Referral Service is very good. We used to be on that list, and generally, it's you can find attorneys who, if you're like, I've got this general question, I don't know where to go, for fairly low cost, the bar will connect you with an attorney to do a consult. So those are two ways you can sort of try to suss it out. But if you want to call your discrimination lawyer, I'm sure he or she can certainly tell you and give you a referral. The second area that is workplace related, but involves matters that are often not handled by the lawyer that will do your discrimination case, are disability claims or disability claims or long and short term insurance matters. So let's say that you become very ill and that you have a an insurance policy through your work, as many of them offer, where it offers you kind of short-term disability or long-term disability, depending on what has happened. These are generally a matter of one contract. What does the insurance policy say? And particularly for long-term disability, it gets into an area of law called ERISA, the Employment Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA, which is a very technical area of the law and involves the workplace and workplace benefits. So if you are looking to get short-term disability because, let's say, an injury or something that happened at work, it'll be a question of what your policy says. And if your insurance policy, carrier denies your claim, then you can certainly hire a lawyer, at any point along the way, to help you with that appeal and to argue on your behalf as to why you should get that coverage. But those generally, again, we don't do those cases. Those are generally not handled by attorneys who do discrimination and wrongful termination cases. They tend to be people who either specialize in that area of the law, particularly when you get into long-term disability and you get into ERISA. Again, it usually will be attorneys who have a specialty in that area of the law, which most often is not the same person who will do your discrimination lawsuit. That doesn't mean they can't. I'm sure there are people out there, no doubt, that do both. But for instance, in our office, like if you have an issue that comes up with your leave or with your disability policy, then we would refer you out to an attorney who specializes in that. Where it can get a little tricky is when you are dealing with ADA claims or claims under the Americans with Disabilities Act. You can see some crossover between, what a discrimination or employment lawyer will do and these, particularly short-term disability claims, because often what will happen is you may have a claim under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which under the ADA, you've got to be able, unlike under a disability claim, you've got to be able to perform the essential functions of your job, with an accommodation. And so sometimes the issue can be, maybe you've got an accommodation. There can be, leave from work can be an accommodation under the ADA, but it's not long-term leave. Courts are pretty strict about this because, again, under the ADA to qualify, you have to be able to perform the essential functions of the job, with an accommodation, right? So you work different hours. If that's a physical disability, they built you a ramp to bring your wheelchair up, whatever. You can work. You just need an accommodation to do it. And sometimes what will happen is you will initially have a claim under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Maybe you get accommodation. Your condition worsens. Maybe you get some leave under the act. And if there's a dispute about that, or if your employer discriminates against you, then that's the kind of case that our firm would handle. But then what will often happen is if that period runs out and you're not improving, then you may file for short-term disability, under your policy. And it's good to have an attorney, perhaps, one who does the ADA matter and one who can look at the short-term disability, because you've got to be a little careful. Again, under short-term disability, you may have to certify or have your doctor certify that you are unable to work. Now, that may not preclude you from filing an ADA claim, but it could complicate it. So you have to be careful with that. And certainly when you get into long-term disability, then you definitely at that point have to have a physician saying that you are unable to come back to work for a certain amount of time, which could, in certain circumstances, preclude you from continuing to pursue a case under the Americans with Disabilities Act. But if that's your situation, then you want a lawyer who knows ERISA, who handles these kinds of long-term disability claims, because they can get quite complicated, and of course very important to you, the employee, because you're talking about being out of work for a long time. And you want that policy to cover you, so you can get that some of your income replaced. A subset of these disability claims are Social Security, like when you're doing disability under the Social Security or SSI. Those are handled by even different attorneys. So you'll have attorneys who will handle disability claims under the Social Security system, tend to specialize in just that, and may or may not do if you have an insurance policy with your company and you're talking about short-term or long-term disability under that policy. That's different than if you're going for Social Security disability. again, another specialized area of the law, and you generally will find attorneys who do that work. That's that's a good part of their practice, and maybe that's all that they do. And again, I know it's complicated. Most of any of the attorneys, if you have a consult with them, or if you contact them or go to their website, we'll say, or we'll have information about this, and certainly we'll be able to refer. If we get somebody who has a disability matter, we know lawyers, who do ERISA work, who do the kind of the contract, long-term and short-term disability under insurance policies. We know people who do Social Security disability cases and are happy to refer you to those, and vice versa, right? I mean, you might go to somebody with a disability matter, and that attorney may say, what, you may have a claim under the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's not something I do. Here's a firm. You can call the Spiggle law firm, and they will help you with that. So again, you will find attorneys who handle one or more areas of law, which is great if that's the case. But just understand that just because there is something wrongful that happens in the workplace, there may be a number of different kind of specialties, that can cover that conduct, and it may not be your discrimination lawyer. So again, workplace, very complicated. Laws about it, very complicated. And, it's important to pick somebody who does the kind of work that you're looking for. If you're unsure, you can consult with any kind of lawyer in this area, and he or she will usually know how to advise you. So I hope that helps. If you found this helpful, share it with a friend. We're certainly trying to get the word out to as many people as possible. If you want the latest and greatest in employment law and other matters that are career related, you can go to our site, thecareerrocket.io, where you can get our free email list, where you will get the latest and greatest in employment law, as well as other tips how to keep your career on an upward trajectory. Hope that helps. And until next time, good luck out there.